welcome to our first virtual field day with the Kiwanee Demo Farms. We're out at Augustian Farms with Aaron and Nick Guilette. Today we're going to be looking at a alfalfa field that they planted with a cover crop mix. Just a little bit of a heads up on the virtual field day format. If you are joining live, you can ask questions in real time, and we will be monitoring the comments section, and we will be asking those questions to Nick and Aaron during the event. If you join after the fact, we will be monitoring those questions, so keep the questions coming. With that, I will turn it over to Nick and Aaron.
All right, hello there. Like Whitney was saying, we're here in Kewaunee, southern Kewaunee County, and we're about, I would say, about 2 miles off of Lake Michigan. We deal with some heavier clay soils here, so we wanted to try some other things, getting away from tillage, and we're trying these multi-species cover crops for the last couple of years. Been having good success with putting the chisel plows away. So what we did here, after this was 4th year alfalfa, we took third crop off of this the first week of August, and then we came in with a diverse mix of cover crops. We had about 2.5 pounds of purple top turnips, 2.5 pounds of tillage radish, 20 pounds of rye, and about 5 pounds of red clover. We sowed that down, like I said, the first week of August. We did not have a whole lot of rain in August, so we did not see this stuff germinate till about, I want to say, the 25th, 27th of August, when we finally did receive some rain. And if you look here now, you can just see the biomass that we have here. This field was really compacted from the semi-traffic and equipment traffic over the 4 years of harvesting. So we wanted to pull that compaction out with cover crops. And the reason why we're here today is we dug kind of a soil pit, and we're going to look down how far down these roots are going from some of these radishes and turnips and the rye plants. It's pretty amazing. When we came out here and planted, we had a hard time getting the shovel in the ground, and in a matter of 3 months' time, if you just look at the soil profile with the macro pores in it and the earthworms, I suppose I grabbed a chunk without any earthworms in now, but it just crumbles right now. And it's amazing what these little hair roots that get down there, what they do to loosen this soil up.
Yeah, so I mean, if we look at that closer, we've got the cottage cheese effect going on, just solid hair roots going to a depth of 4 or 5 inches. When you look within here, I don't know if you can see this on the Facebook site, but you can definitely see the macro pores, or from the earthworms, allowing increased infiltration from the water. Right here on the soil surface next to my thumb, we actually have evidence of an earthworm mitten, where that's the excrement as they come up and pull organic matter down. Obviously they digest that, and then they pass that out the backside. But again, just tremendous hair root. I mean, it's all bound together. It seems in a way like it maybe would be compacted, but it's not. I mean, when you break a chunk apart, it's just cottage cheese effect. Crumbles in your hands. Next year's corn crop is going to be able to exploit the root channels that are being created and have a great seed bed to get going and started. Right there we've got a little earthworm. But before, when we were breaking these apart, there were definitely clumps like this size that had 4, 5, 6 earthworms in them. And we're November 5th with t-shirts, but it also shows that the earthworm activity, the biological activity in that soil surface is still going full tilt, and it's exactly what we want to see.
What we did for manure applications this year was, after second crop, it received 7,000 gallons with a Shootamaker, and then after third crop, before we planted this, it was another 7,000 gallons. I believe it was splashed on top. And what we're going to do next week out here is we're going to come back with that Shootamaker, and we're going to apply our 10,000 gallons of dairy manure, and at that point, these fields should be set then for planting next spring. We will let these fields sit through the winter, and when they're dry next spring, we will come in here and hopefully plant green into it, and then kill the rye off that is here, and our nutrients should be all down and held here with the biomass from these plants.
Should we take a look at the species diversity that we have going on out here? Aaron, if you want to go ahead, feel free.
These are some of the turnips the purple top turnips that were planted. They're probably the size of a softball, I'd say. We did see a lot of growth in the last month. These turnips through September, like I said, they started out. We lost that 3 weeks in August without any rain. Nothing germinated. So I believe that if we would have had 3 weeks more growth on these things, we'd see turnips out here like this. But these are some of the bigger turnips we've ever grown before. And that root structure, when we go down in the hole later, you'll see that taproot goes down another 18 inches. So there's a lot of biomass here that's going to break down over the winter. And then Nick, if he wants to talk about the tillage radish.
Yeah, so we've got two different types of radishes out here. One is the tillage radish, which I believe is the daikon, and that's the traditional type radish that we're talking about. Obviously, there's a few hair roots up here on the top, but here we can see when I pulled it out, we sliced through those hair roots, and we're just left with a tuber and an inch or two of the taproot going down. But there's nothing, I believe we've got another 6 or 8 inches of hair roots that are extending below this, exploring that soil profile and continuing on. And then we've got another radish here that Aaron's holding on to. It's a more leafy, maybe almost rape-like, but it's not rape. It is a tillage radish. It's a different variety. And again, just taking advantage of biodiversity. And you know, when we have different plants growing out here, we have different microbes, different biological activity. It's not a monoculture anymore. We're taking advantage of multiple different species, and that's definitely a plus when we go to soil health.
One thing we did do, I forgot to mention, was after third crop, we when we splashed the manure on top, we waited a couple days, and we did come back and hit it with a shot of Roundup. We didn't kill 100% of the alfalfa, and I did have some spring seeded grass in here because of the winter kill. So as you can see, there is still some alfalfa in here, but I would say we got an 80% kill. But at the end of the day, that doesn't matter, because that just helps with the biomass that's left in here.
Yep. A lot of our grasses, I think I've got a winter rye here, you know, that we put in at, you said 20 pounds per acre.
Yeah.
Definitely much more elongated than in a corn silage scenario where it has full potential to capture that sunlight. But in this here, I mean, we've got more biomass and it's competing for sunlight. And again, it's part of the mix, and hopefully this is one of the green roots and plants that we have next spring to keep that water pump on. You know, it keeps water moving and transpiring as this plant grows next spring, drying out that soil profile so that we can get in here with the corn planter at a little bit earlier time and dry that soil profile out for us. So if we look at the soil surface, I don't know if we can zoom in that tight or not, but here you can see a lot of the earthworm mittens, a lot of the clumps and excrement. Right here is an earthworm mitten where an earthworm had come up, is grabbing pieces of organic matter, pulling it back down its burrow, and that's acting like our tillage. It's pulling that organic matter back down. They're aerating the soil. Again, greater infiltration, promoting biological activity within the soil. And just a lot of good things going on right here right on the soil surface.
You can see some of the red clover. Looks like it's kind of stunted. It's underneath the leaves of the tillage radish, but next spring that red clover should kind of pop off with the rye when the tillage radish, all the biomass decays over winter.
Yep, part of that planting green concept and having that living root to survive the winter. We've got definitely some annuals that'll winter kill off, and we've got some that'll will be persistent and be there next year. So,
do we want to take a look down maybe now at
on the soil profile?
Soil profile.
And just as a reminder, if you're tuning in, feel free to ask any questions. We'll be monitoring the comment section.
So one of the things we wanted to see was how deep these roots are going down into the soil profile. And as you can see there, Aaron is holding on to an alfalfa taproot that we're gonna take a tape measure and see what we got for depth. I believe right now we're at about 25 inches on the soil surface, and that taproot is down to about 5 inches, and it is not broke. We still have that behind the tape measure. It's completely intact here going into that C layer. I'm pretty firm believer, I think, that we've got at least another foot. So 25, we're closing in on 36 inches, 37 inches. Again, we hear that alfalfa roots can go down 3 to 5 feet, and we're seeing evidence of that here. So that's part of the reason we see that see them stay green through some of our drought spells. Then when we look in the soil profile, we'll see how much of this hair root activity we've got going on up in our A and B. So when we look at a soil layer, I'm going to go real quickly. On the top 6 to 8, 10 inches, we've got the A horizon. Then below that, we've got a B horizon. Then we get into what we call a C horizon down towards the bottom, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but just if I'm referencing that quickly, it's A on top, B in the middle, C as we get down into that subsoil. But when we break apart this top A layer, it's crumbling like cottage cheese. We can see the evidence of all the hair roots in there on the sidewall of the soil profile here. And again, here's a great clump of just how much. Right here's the soil surface up on top by my left hand, and just hair roots everywhere in this top 6 inches, which is exactly what we want to see, that all that area is being exploited and taken advantage of. It leaves a root channel there for the next year's primary crop, and then that's that much easier for the corn crop to keep moving next spring and early summer, to get down into more soil to explore for nutrients and water, micronutrients. As we continue down, we're going to start, to me it looks like there is a bit of a differentiation between my left hand and the screwdriver here, where it's a little more cottage cheese-like effect up on top. And as we come below that, it's still good soil, still crumbling a lot, but it looks to me a little bit blockier. And I think that's where we transition from that A to the B layer, but still a ton of hair roots in this area, which is exactly what we want to see. Then as we transition further down, we're starting to see some of those lighter colors as I pop this sidewall off. That's evidence of the C layer starting to transition. There could be earthworm activity that's bringing some of those C colors back into the B horizon. That would be a really awesome thing. And another thing that I think is starting to occur as we keep going down, I think there's some bleeding or some staining of the dark brown hues, the organic matter here in that B layer, transitioning down into the C layer, which in theory should result in that C layer maybe creating another small layer where it's better than what it sits now. And that's the result of less tillage, cover crops, and adding organic matters to the soil through the cover crops and the manure. So I'm going to slide over a little bit here because I got better exposure on the C layer. You can see a couple different colors going on. Definitely lighter gray in this C layer here, and definitely indicating that we're in the subsoil. But as we transition down a few inches lower, we start to see a redder hue of the soil color, and it's just different soil parent material. That's what ultimately in the long term will maybe make some topsoil, or it's just part of the parent material as glaciers went across this landscape and what they left behind. But once we transition below that redder color, we can see it transition back to a very light, almost like beach sand color. It's not sand, but that's evidence of reductions occurring. Maybe we would find some modeling in here from anaerobic conditions, as we're almost probably 25, 30 inches below the soil surface, and we're in a little bit of a bowl here on the landscape, so the water is what was causing that anaerobic conditions, and that's just causing different colors in the soil profile. So again, we're only about 36 inches deep, but that's what we wanted to see. So just a lot of curious things when we look at a soil profile. Over here we've actually got a radish exposed, and this is one of those leafier radishes that doesn't form the great big deep taproot tuber, but we can see the hair roots of that radish. This one's broke, and this one is still attached, coming in contact with alfalfa root, following that main channel down, probably to a depth of about 12 or 14 inches as I estimate here. But evidence from where the taproot is, the tuberous part of the root, though, I mean, there's another 8 to 10 inches of fibrous roots that are going down into that soil, and that's what we want to see help break up that soil compaction. We actually have a dandelion root, and most of us view dandelions as weeds, and probably rightfully so, but the taproot is coming down here and keeping coming down just as deep as that tillage radish hair root. So Mother Nature knew what she was doing when she created some of these species, but you know, they also compete for our primary crops. But just evidence of the biodiversity that's out in this stand after being in a no-till scenario, you know, was alfalfa.
Great. Well, thank you so much, you guys. If you have any questions coming in, looks like we're about time to wrap up. Thank you for tuning in, and again, we will be monitoring the questions, so keep them coming.